What if the greatest revenge was no revenge at all? Just silence. No explanation, no confrontation, no last word. Just disappearance. One day, you stop replying. You stop showing up. You stop letting them touch your peace. And suddenly, everything shifts. They don't understand it yet, but you do. Because that quiet decision, the one that made them think you gave up, was the moment you took your power back. The Stoics knew this long before you ever lived it. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "The best revenge is to be unlike him who performed the injury." What he meant was simple but devastating. When you rise above, when you choose stillness over spectacle, your absence becomes the loudest thing in the room. This isn't a story about running away. It's a story about transformation. Disappearing isn't weakness, it's mastery. It's the silent rebellion of someone who finally sees that peace is more valuable than being understood. And the irony? They still haven't recovered. They still wonder why your silence feels heavier than your words ever did. Think about it. When a storm ends, the silence that follows isn't empty, it's sacred. That's what your withdrawal was. The stillness after chaos, the calm that terrified them because it meant you were no longer theirs to manipulate, explain to, or fix. Seneca once said, "He who is brave is free." Freedom, to the Stoics, was never about control over others, it was control over self. You found that freedom when you chose to vanish rather than argue. And yet, your absence speaks. It whispers the truth they tried to bury, that they were never the center of your strength. You were. Your disappearance mirrored back to them everything they refused to see. The weight of their own emptiness, the fragility of their ego, the hollowness of their noise. Epictetus would have smiled at that, reminding you that no man is free who is not master of himself. You mastered yourself the moment you stopped dancing to the tune of their chaos. They still talk about you, don't they? Not out of love, but confusion. They can't process that your silence was not a cry for attention, but a declaration of independence. You see, true Stoic revenge is never about returning harm. It's about removing access. Not punishing them with anger, but starving them with indifference. That's why they can't recover. Because you didn't play their game. You ended it. And maybe, deep down, that's the truth you've always known but never named. That the final act of strength isn't to prove them wrong, it's to prove yourself peaceful. To become so centered, so untouchable, that their memory fades like smoke in the wind while your silence remains eternal. So here's the promise. If you've ever felt the ache of being misunderstood, the exhaustion of explaining your worth, or the sting of being taken for granted, stay. Because what you're about to learn in this story is not how to disappear from others, but how to reappear to yourself. The Stoics knew this secret centuries ago, and once you understand it, you'll never chase validation again.
They called it ghosting. They said you ran away, that you couldn't handle the fire you helped create. But the truth is, you didn't run, you rose. You realized something that most people never do. Peace requires distance. And sometimes, the only way to save your mind is to vanish from the noise that keeps wounding it. Zeno of Citium, the founder of Stoicism, learned this the hard way. Shipwrecked and left with nothing, he wandered into Athens, broke, alone, and invisible. But it was there, in his disappearance from everything he once knew, that he discovered something eternal. He realized that no one can take from you what you've already let go of. His shipwreck wasn't loss, it was purification. That's the first Stoic truth. Disappearing is not abandonment, it's alignment. You withdraw not to escape the world, but to see it clearly. When you step back from those who drain you, from the chaos that demands your reaction, you're not hiding, you're healing. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "Nowhere can man find a quieter or more untroubled retreat than in his own soul. And in that retreat, you find what the world cannot give, your center." But let's be honest, at first, it doesn't feel like sovereignty. It feels like loss. The silence aches, the mind replays conversations, the heart keeps whispering, "What if?" Your absence begins to question itself. You wonder if they even notice you're gone. And that's when the Stoic discipline is tested, because your mind craves noise. It wants closure, apology, acknowledgement. Yet Stoicism teaches that the only closure that exists is self-control. You see, modern psychology agrees with what Epictetus preached 2,000 years ago. When we detach from toxic validation, our nervous system begins to repair itself. Silence rewires the brain. It shifts your focus from being seen to being self-aware. Every time you resist the urge to explain, to post, to prove, you are training your mind in Stoic endurance. You are building psychological muscle, not through resistance, but through restraint. And that's where your sovereignty begins. It's not in control over others. That was never real power. It's in control over yourself, your attention, your energy, your reactions. Seneca said, "He who has learned to be content with his lot and reconciled with his circumstances is free." And that's what your disappearance really was, an act of freedom disguised as loss. You stopped chasing explanations, because explanations don't heal. Time does. Reflection does. Perspective does. You stopped seeking to be understood, because the people who need your silence to see your worth will never understand you in your presence. You stopped performing your pain, because you learned what the Stoics taught, that suffering ends, not when the world changes, but when your attachment to it does. So when they called you distant, cold, unbothered, they misunderstood. You weren't turning away, you were turning inward. You weren't running from them, you were returning to yourself. You chose sovereignty over sympathy, stillness over validation, and mastery over reaction. And that's the paradox of disappearing. The quieter you become, the more they hear their own noise. The more you withdraw, the more they confront the emptiness they used to fill with your attention. That's why your silence feels so heavy, because it carries truth.
When you disappeared, something remarkable happened. Not for you. You were already moving inward, already learning the quiet art of self-possession. But for them, they began to feel the void you left behind, the absence that couldn't be filled with excuses, noise, or manipulation. And in that emptiness, a truth they never wanted to confront surfaced. They depended on you more than they realized. It is a cruel and beautiful irony of human nature. Epictetus once said, "Wealth consists not in having great possessions, but in having few wants." They had wanted you, wanted your attention, your validation, your energy. Yet they had never earned it. They had taken it. And your disappearance became the mirror that reflected their greed, their entitlement, their weakness. You see, detachment is not punishment. It is revelation. When you step away, when your voice and presence no longer serve their expectations, people are forced to confront themselves. And this confrontation is uncomfortable. It is disorienting. It is the kind of inner turbulence that most try to avoid by clinging to others. But you didn't cling. You chose clarity. The Stoics understood this deeply. Seneca warned that we are not harmed by the acts of others, but by our dependence on them. A man's true delight is to be secure in himself, he wrote. Your absence revealed that they had relied on a mirage of control over your feelings, your decisions, your life. And now that mirage had evaporated, leaving only raw reflection. And yet, let's not mistake this for arrogance. Your silence did not humiliate them, it simply illuminated. They were confronted not with your superiority, but with their own fragility. And every unanswered message, every unreturned call, every empty seat became a philosophical echo of the Stoic lesson. You are not responsible for others' awareness, only your own. Modern psychology would call this enforced reflection. When we are deprived of familiar emotional anchors, the mind is forced to adapt. Anxiety rises, self-perception falters, and dependency becomes visible. And this is precisely what your disappearance did. It forced them to face what they had ignored, that your presence had been a gift freely given, not an obligation. And in the midst of their confusion, you discovered another Stoic secret. Detachment magnifies self-worth. When you stop bending to fill the needs of those who fail to appreciate you, your energy no longer leaks into the void. Instead, it consolidates, gathering strength, resilience, and clarity. Your absence is a declaration. I am sufficient. I am sovereign. My peace is non-negotiable. They may call it abandonment, or coldness, or betrayal, but you know better. You didn't abandon them. You abandoned dependency. You didn't punish them. You revealed reality. And in the silent spaces you left, the truth grows louder, that the most potent influence we ever have is not what we say, but what we don't. In this way, disappearance becomes a lens, not on them, but on you. A lens through which you see who they really are, who you truly are, and where your energy belongs. The Stoics didn't fight the world. They withdrew from its illusions to see it clearly, and in doing so, they became untouchable. You have begun this same path. There's a moment after disappearance when the world keeps turning, yet everything feels sharper. Every memory, every slight, every unspoken word presses against the mind like a weight you can't shrug off. And here is where the Stoics teach their hardest lesson. Strength is forged not in comfort, but in the quiet struggle of your own thoughts. Seneca wrote, "Difficulties strengthen the mind as labor does the body." When you withdrew, you did not shield yourself from life, you faced it on a new battlefield, within. You confronted the restlessness of your own mind, the fear of being misunderstood, the ache of being taken for granted. And you survived. More than that, you learned. Withdrawal is not emptiness, it is training. Each day of silence becomes a test. Can you resist the urge to justify yourself? Can you endure the tension of absence without crumbling? Can you let go of the narrative others demand while holding fast to your own? These are the trials of Stoic mastery. Imagine Marcus Aurelius, seated alone in his tent during a campaign, surrounded by chaos, betrayal, and death, writing, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength." Your disappearance mirrors this exact wisdom. You cannot control how they react, how they miss you, how they spin your absence into guilt or regret, but you can control yourself. You can preserve your peace, your attention, your integrity. And in doing so, you wield a power more enduring than any argument, confrontation, or revenge could ever give. Modern neuroscience confirms what Stoics intuited centuries ago. Resilience is cultivated in moments of self-imposed challenge. Your quiet withdrawal triggers reflection, self-regulation, and emotional independence. The mind rewires itself to tolerate absence, to withstand uncertainty, to reclaim calm in the face of chaos. Each day of silence, each ignored message, each unspoken rebuttal becomes a gem for your soul. And the beauty of this transformation, it is invisible to them. They may notice the absence, the stillness, the lack of reaction, but they cannot see the inner battle raging quietly within you, the refining fire of discipline, patience, and self-mastery. You are becoming untouchable, not through confrontation, but through composure, not through proving, but through existing without permission or approval. This is the paradox that most never grasp. Withdrawal is not defeat. It is armor. It is the forge where anger becomes patience, anxiety becomes acceptance, and longing becomes equanimity. It is the slow, deliberate cultivation of a mind that bends but does not break. Epictetus called this state invulnerability through virtue, and in your silence, you have begun to embody it. You begin to see the world may scream, manipulate, and demand, but it cannot penetrate the calm that arises from sovereignty, clarity, and resilience. Each unreturned call, each unacknowledged attempt at provocation is a test, and each test strengthens you further. What once would have hurt now passes like wind over stone. You are no longer molded by their chaos. You mold yourself in quiet, deliberate stillness. And in that stillness, a revelation emerges. Your disappearance was never about them. It was about creating a space where the self could grow unshackled, resilient, and unassailable. A place where mastery is not measured by control over others, but by the serenity of control over yourself.
When you walked away, it wasn't absence for absence's sake. It was a declaration, quiet, unshakable, absolute. You were teaching, not them, but yourself, that your energy, your attention, your presence are not commodities to be spent on those who fail to honor them. And in that lesson, the Stoics whisper their truth. He who abandons what is not worthy finds what is. Marcus Aurelius faced betrayal not in whispers or text messages, but in the betrayal of men he trusted with the empire's secrets. And what did he do? He withdrew, internally, from attachment to outcomes beyond his control. If it is not right, do not do it. If it is not true, do not say it, he wrote. Your disappearance was your version of this, a refusal to participate in a world that demanded proof of your worth while denying you peace. Walking away is the act that teaches clarity. It reveals who values you not for what you can give them, but for the truth of your being. Those who panic at your absence were never invested in your presence. They were invested in possession, in control, in the comfort of your availability. And as Seneca said, associate with those who will make a better man of you. Your departure sifted the wheat from the chaff. Attachment is dangerous when unearned. It blinds the mind, exhausts the heart, and corrodes dignity. By disappearing, you exercised the Stoic art of discernment, choosing what to nourish and what to release. The pain of withdrawal is brief compared to the lifelong erosion caused by clinging to what does not serve you. Epictetus reminds us, don't demand that things happen as you wish, but wish them to happen as they do. By leaving, you did not deny reality, you embraced it. You acknowledged that not everyone is worthy of proximity, and that your peace is non-negotiable. And here is the subtle beauty. They still feel the absence, still grasp at the space you once occupied. Yet it is not your presence they miss, it is the value they never gave you permission to earn. That longing in their chest is the echo of your lesson, the quiet, undeniable force of self-respect. Your detachment became the mirror, reflecting not only their dependence, but also their failure to honor you. Modern psychology calls this boundaries. Ancient Stoicism calls it virtue in practice.
Both converge on the same truth. Those who do not meet your standards of respect do not deserve your attention. Withdrawal is not cruelty, it is education. For them, if they see it, and for you, always. Each step away rebuilds the soul, fortifies dignity, and cultivates a reservoir of inner authority. Your disappearance teaches the ultimate lesson of value, that you are never diminished by absence, only enhanced by intentional withdrawal. Each day spent unseen is a day spent rediscovering the self that thrived before their noise, before their judgments, before their manipulations. You begin to recognize the sacred truth. Your worth is innate, not negotiated. And in that recognition, another Stoic insight emerges. By walking away, you claim your sovereignty. By letting go, you honor your essence. By disappearing, you demonstrate mastery of self over circumstance. You are no longer tethered to the approval of others, but anchored in your own virtue. And that, above all, is the gift of disappearance, the quiet cultivation of value, respect, and unshakable dignity. There's a hidden power in being untouchable, not physically, but emotionally. When you disappeared, the world tried to tug at you with guilt, anger, and longing. But they found nothing. Not because you didn't care, but because you had learned what the Stoics called true freedom. Freedom from the tyranny of external judgment. Epictetus wrote, "It's not what happens to you, but how you react to it that matters." And in your silence, you enacted this truth. Every expectation they imposed, every subtle attempt to provoke a response, ricocheted off the armor of your self-possession. They wanted emotion, you gave equanimity. They wanted chaos, you gave calm. And that, more than any words, became your quiet revenge. Disappearance is a laboratory for the mind. Here, you discover that your peace does not depend on validation, apology, or reconciliation. You are not hostage to their moods, desires, or regrets. Modern neuroscience supports this. Detachment strengthens prefrontal regulation, allowing your brain to resist emotional hijack. In other words, Stoic withdrawal isn't avoidance, it's training. It teaches the mind to respond with discernment, not impulse, to observe without reacting, to act only when aligned with virtue and self-respect. The irony is delicious. They may rage, plead, or try to reclaim what they lost. And in their attempts, they reveal their dependence, their lack of self-mastery, their hunger for control. Meanwhile, you remain serene, untouched. Every day you stay silent, you cement a boundary they cannot breach, that your emotions are your own, sacred and inviolate. This is the sixth sense of the Stoic life. Independence from expectation. Marcus Aurelius warned against giving your inner world over to the whims of others. He wrote, "If someone is able to show me that what I think or do is not right, I will happily change. But I will not be swayed by the opinions of the crowd." Your disappearance embodies this principle. You are teaching them that influence exists only when you allow it, and that your inner life is yours alone to govern. And in that governance lies liberation. You no longer tether yourself to the drama of their perception. You no longer chase responses, explanations, or approval. Instead, you cultivate the calm of a mind that can weather storms without bending. This independence is not isolation, it is sovereignty. It is the quiet rebellion of someone who has realized that no one
can dictate their peace without consent. Disappearance becomes a mirror for the soul, not for them, but for you. Each day apart, each unreacted to attempted engagement, each silent witness of their struggle to grasp your absence teaches you the ultimate lesson. Emotional freedom is the most exquisite revenge. Not revenge against them, but mastery over yourself. And this mastery grows quietly, imperceptibly, until it is absolute. Until their attempts at disturbance bounce harmlessly off your cultivated stillness. Until you realize that their confusion, panic, or longing matters less than the serene world you have built within.
Time stretches strangely when you disappear. Moments feel longer, days feel heavier, and yet with each tick of the clock you realize something profound. Nothing lasts forever. Not their outrage, not their confusion, not even their longing. Disappearance is a lesson in impermanence, a mirror revealing the fleeting nature of influence. What once seemed permanent, your presence, their attention, the noise, melts away like morning mist. Zeno once reflected that humans suffer most not from what happens, but from how they attach themselves to it. Man conquers the world not by seeking to control it, but by mastering himself, he said. And in your absence, mastery unfolds like a quiet tide. You are patient, watching the ripples of their reactions rise and fade, knowing that their fixation on your disappearance will not last. Only your equanimity endures. Consider Marcus Aurelius during campaigns rife with betrayal. Surrounded by schemers, he could not control their motives, their slander, or their attempts to unsettle him. So what did he do? He let time move. He let the world speak. He stayed aligned with virtue. Accept whatever comes to you woven in the pattern of your destiny, for what could more aptly fit your needs, he wrote. Your silence mirrors this. By vanishing, you remove yourself from their chaos, letting time reveal the truths they resist, that your absence is permanent, yet not painful for you, that their grasp was illusory. Patience grows quietly in withdrawal. Every day you refrain from explanation, every moment you resist the temptation to justify, fortifies your soul. You learn to tolerate ambiguity, to sit with discomfort, and to watch life unfold without reaction. Seneca captured this perfectly. No man is crushed by misfortune unless he has first been deceived by prosperity. When you disappear, you no longer seek prosperity from their recognition. You cultivate the inner riches of clarity, calm, and self-mastery. And perspective blooms. You begin to see the impermanence of influence, how little control anyone truly wields over another's inner world. Your silence demonstrates that true authority is not over others, but over self. You are free to observe, to reflect, and to act only when aligned with reason and virtue. The world may respond, or it may not. Their confusion may linger, or it may fade. But you remain anchored in your own mind, untethered by the whims of their awareness. Modern psychology confirms what Stoicism has always known. Detachment develops cognitive resilience. The prefrontal cortex strengthens, the emotional centers stabilize, and you learn that not every situation requires your energy. Every unreacted to provocation, every withheld explanation, every quietly held boundary builds not bitterness, but fortitude. You train your mind to endure the unknown, the unacknowledged, and the unappreciated without fracture. This is the sixth Stoic truth. Disappearance teaches patience and perspective. It reveals the impermanence of influence and the permanence of self-mastery. It shows that the world moves on, but your mind need not be swept with it. That absence is not loss, but revelation. And the final, subtle lesson begins to whisper.
The quieter you are, the more the world reveals itself to you. Your peace becomes your shield, your detachment becomes your compass, and your presence, when it returns, is no longer borrowed from their validation, but anchored in your own sovereignty.
Disappearance is a magnifying glass. It reveals what matters and what does not. What you once thought essential, the constant validation, the endless explanations, the fragile approval of others, suddenly shrinks into insignificance. And in its place, a new clarity emerges. The things that deserve your presence, your energy, your love. Epictetus reminds us, make the best use of what is in your power and take the rest as it happens. Your absence is the ultimate exercise in this principle. By stepping back, you stop dispersing yourself on trivialities and misplaced expectations. You stop tethering your happiness to people who cannot value it. And in doing so, you reclaim your time, your focus, and your soul. Seneca described this kind of detachment as a form of liberation. He who is everywhere is nowhere. Before, you were everywhere, scattered across demands, opinions, and obligations. Now, by disappearing, you are fully present with yourself. You are nowhere for the unworthy, but entirely somewhere sacred, grounded, attentive, and attuned to what truly matters. And in this solitude, the patterns of attachment become clear. You see how often your energy was borrowed, your emotions manipulated, your priorities redirected by those who cared more about possession than presence. Modern psychology calls it emotional contagion. The Stoics called it ignorance. Both describe the same truth. Unexamined attachment leads to suffering. By removing yourself, you break the spell. Yet disappearance does more than shield. It primes. It primes the soul to recognize authentic connection. When you re-emerge, if you choose to, you do so not out of habit, need, or expectation, but from choice. You reconnect with those who honor your presence, respect your boundaries, and reflect the virtue you've cultivated. Marcus Aurelius observed, "Waste no more time arguing about what a good man should be. Be one. In your absence, you have become one, strong, clear, undistracted, and unshakable." And here is the subtle, piercing beauty of this truth. Those who tried to bind you with expectation now see your freedom. Your value is no longer contingent on proximity, explanation, or performance. Your priorities, refined and sharpened through detachment, act as a compass, guiding you toward relationships and situations aligned with integrity, meaning, and depth. Disappearance is not denial. It is purification. It is the slow, deliberate act of pruning the branches that offer shade without fruit. It is the cultivation of an inner garden where every interaction is intentional, every bond authentic, and every attachment chosen rather than tolerated. And in this refined space, a quiet miracle occurs. The soul learns to love not out of necessity, but out of alignment. Connection becomes reciprocal, joy becomes deliberate, and peace becomes non-negotiable. Your silence has done its work. It has cleared the noise, sharpened the boundaries, and tuned your mind to what is enduring. The truth is simple, yet devastating. Your disappearance was the quietest revenge, not through anger, confrontation, or retaliation, but through peace. Every moment they feel your absence, every glance at the empty space you once occupied,
echoes your mastery. They scramble to recover what they lost, but you are already beyond their reach. Marcus Aurelius said, "The best revenge is to be unlike him who performed the injury." You embodied it. Your silence taught them what words never could, that strength is invisible, dignity is untouchable, and absence can speak louder than presence. By withdrawing, you forced them to confront their own inadequacies, their dependence, and their lack of appreciation. Epictetus reminded us, it is impossible for a man to learn what he thinks he already knows. Your absence became their harshest lesson. And the most potent part? You weren't even aware of their panic. You weren't waiting, calculating, or seeking acknowledgement. You simply existed in alignment with yourself. That is the essence of Stoic revenge. Not to wound, but to rise. Not to harm, but to heal. Not to explain, but to master. In vanishing, you reclaimed your energy, your attention, and your peace. You demonstrated without a single word that your worth does not require validation. And every day they struggle to fill the void you left, you grow stronger, quieter, and freer. This is the paradox. The more you withdraw, the more your power becomes undeniable. The more they panic, the more you are serene. The more they obsess, the more you are whole. And in this quiet, subtle mastery, they will never recover. Not because you hurt them, but because you became untouchable.
Perhaps the greatest truth of all is this: the answer was never control. It was acceptance. You cannot bend the world, nor force understanding, nor demand acknowledgement. The Stoics taught that peace comes not from changing others, but from mastering yourself. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "You have power over your mind, not outside events." Realize this, and you will find strength. Your disappearance embodies this wisdom. All the chaos, all the questions, all the longing they feel, it is their story, not yours. You have stepped outside it. You no longer need their validation, their apologies, or their recognition. You are sovereign. You are quiet. You are whole. Silence has a weight that words cannot match. It is not emptiness, it is presence in its purest form. Seneca said, "He who is brave is free." By walking away, by withdrawing, by vanishing without drama, you claimed freedom that no one can take. You demonstrated the ultimate Stoic revenge, not harm, but liberation. And in that liberation, you discover something sacred. You were never missing. You were never incomplete. You were simply waiting to return to yourself, untethered, unshakable, and at peace. Perhaps they will never understand. Perhaps they will never recover. And that is not your concern. Their recovery is not your responsibility. Your task was always your own mastery, your own clarity, your own serenity. So, in the stillness, you stand unbroken. In the silence, you are whole. In the absence, you are present, fully, irrevocably, and forever in command of your mind and your life. Perhaps the greatest power ever wielded is quiet. The quiet of knowing yourself, valuing yourself, and refusing to give another the ability to disturb your peace. Your disappearance was never revenge. It was awakening.